What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show.
And there's a bunch of different symptoms, but I think the baseline thing for people with disorders like that is a lack of empathy.
Yes.
And that's what enables them to do what they do. So
yeah, having a reckless disregard for the safety or safety of others.
I typically go to the Mayo Clinic because the Mayo Clinic is, pretty well respected.
Let's do it.
One of the top medical institutions in the United States and the world, for that matter.
Read them off.
So yeah, ignoring right and wrong, telling lies to take advantage of others, not being sensitive to or respectful of others, using charm or wit to manipulate others for personal gain or pleasure, having a sense of superiority and being extremely opinionated, having problems with the law, including criminal behavior, being hostile, aggressive, violent, or threatening to others, feeling no guilt about harming others, doing dangerous things with no regard for the safety of self or others, being irresponsible, and failing to fulfill work or financial responsibilities.
And this is describing antisocial personality disorder.
Right.
And I feel like you just described Tony Soprano to a fucking
See?
T.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because like all of us probably do some of these things to a certain degree, but these things are an indicator.
Oh, yeah.
If you've got quite a few of these things going on in your life, that you have this disorder.
Yeah, if you're having a bad day, you're capable of any of these. Well,
right.
Well, most of them.
Right.
Tony Soprano embodied every single one of these with everything he did.
Yeah.
And maybe that's actually a decent one to start with. You did an incredible hour and a half or hour 15, 20-minute breakdown on Tony Soprano. And you and I were talking before. It's your favorite show of all time.
It is my favorite show.
Welcome to Sopranoville in New Jersey.
Thank you.
First
Thank you
time
very
here.
much.
But you nailed so many things about him, because you want to talk about someone who had a very fucked up environment.
Oh yeah.
That then molded him to respond to impetus, whatever it is, differently than others would.
Yeah.
Like you crafted it from his childhood. You also worked in like the Many Saints of Newark and the things we learned in that movie. But what you defined him as antisocial personality disorder. What did you expect that going into it already?
Yeah. So I had already done a few videos on characters who have antisocial personality disorder. I was kind of expecting him to have narcissistic personality disorder, which is a little different but kind of similar.
How so?
It's a narcissist is like narcissistic personality disorder is they're more so just worried about themselves, and they might not be necessarily violent all the time or have these strange impulses to I need to go out and kill people because I like how it feels. Right. Like they'll just kill people because, I'm thinking about me and that's what I got to do for me in the moment. I'm so obsessed with me that I don't care what I do to other people. So I thought he was going to be more so that, and the reason that video actually ended up being so long compared to like Walter White, which is about the same like season length. Yeah. I think that maybe about
it's
a
like
season
60
less.
versus 86. Yeah, but same difference.
But Tony's such an interesting one to go through because he's going through therapy the whole time.
Yes.
So I looked at every single therapy session and I had a lot of help from Dr. Jennifer Melfi, shout out to Dr. Melfi for that video. But yeah, Tony's a great example of someone who is pretty ingrained in his life, like all of his influences growing up were gangsters, Yes. And so Tony is clearly capable of being a family man. He's got a family, he's got a wife, and he's got 2 kids. And when he's at home, they typically have a good time. He's nice to his kids, and he can be nice to Carmela, even though they fight all the time. But it's very ingrained within him to be who he is. But Tony is clearly knows what right and wrong is. It's not like.
You think so?
I think so. Oh yeah. He, for example, most people in the mafia, right? They had a rule about not killing civilians.
Yeah.
They only killed people who were in the criminal game.
Right.
And why? Because one,
they signed up for it.
Well, no, why don't they kill the civilians? Because one, it brings heat on them, right? But it's also not right. That person is an innocent person. They view the people that are working with them, they're not innocent because they, we agree that we're all in this game together, and now you're no longer innocent. You're part of it, and we're If we got to kill you, we got to kill you. If you got to kill us, you got to kill us. It's fair game, But the people that aren't in the game, they're innocent people. So they can recognize that we shouldn't be killing innocent people because they're innocent. But these other people aren't so innocent, so we will. They know what right and wrong is.
But do you think that's more subconscious based on the rules of the game that they're in, that they're taught when they're young? They're like, oh, this is just how we do things, versus they actually can tell the difference? You know how like someone can be, you can tell someone to repeat something over and over again, then they repeat it and they have it memorized, but they may not actually embody what they're saying. They're just repeating what you said.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It depends on a case-by-case basis, I suppose, but they know what right and wrong is. It's more so just a willingness to ignore it, I think, is how I see it. They're aware that what they're doing isn't looked well upon by the rest of the world, but they don't really care. They're aware that people don't like being beat up or stolen from or killed, but they don't care, and I think, I don't know, it's tough. That's honestly a tough one. It's maybe they do, maybe they don't,
Well, if you look at the basis of the series, David Chase, who obviously did a brilliant job, the initial pitch for himself of what he was doing is he wanted to write a show about a depressed man who's in the middle of a midlife crisis, whose every problem traces back to his mother, who was a miserable, depressed bitch.
Sure.
And all he did was he took that and said, okay, and I'm going to make that character in the literal mafia. But the basis of the character is actually technically drawn to the everyday folk too. It goes to a whole new level when you have him literally be in the mafia where he's breaking laws every day. Right. But the idea is that he was trying to show that this type of person exists. And some of it, by the way, was based on himself and on his own North Jersey upbringing and problems with his mother. So I look at that and I say, okay, take away the fact that Tony Soprano was a gangster. Let's remove some of, therefore, maybe the killings he would do and stuff like that, like the most gangstery of the gangster stuff. Right. Remove the fact that his literal business is a crime. Let's say he actually just worked at Barone Sanitation and ran that. Right. Or maybe he had to kick up money to some gangsters who told him what to do. Is he still that person without the mob?
I don't think so. No. Because as much as his mother is like a miserable person, especially, I think if I remember the Many Saints of Newark correctly, you see how he's just around all these other mob guys all the time when he's a kid. That's his dad, that's his uncles, that's everyone he's associated with is in the mob. So to take out the mob stuff for Tony, that means you'd have to take out those influences. And with those influences gone, why is Tony going to be a mob guy like he was, Right. So I don't think he would have been that person if he didn't have those influences.
But forget being in the mob or not in the mob. Assuming he's not in the mob, like the psychological way that he ended up.
He would have had to have those influences around him too, not just his mother. It would have. So if it wasn't mob guys when he was growing up, it could have been an abusive dad. It could have been a group of friends who, from an early age, who all had different abusive parents or whatever, that got him into that stuff. It could be that he was living in an environment that was extremely impoverished, and on a daily basis he witnessed suffering, and that really changed his mind, his psyche. One of the ways I like to look at it is, if you look at a kid who grew up in the suburbs with a loving family, mom and dad, a couple of brothers and sisters, they played with each other on the weekends. They did sports, board games, whatever you want. And he did good in school. His parents, let him be who he wanted to be. And then you got someone in an impoverished environment with parents who are committing crimes, who are abusive towards each other, abusive towards their kids. Right. The people around them are doing all these things too. Well, that person's going to turn out like those people, and not necessarily like those people, but they're going to turn out they're going to have those influences, and it's going to dramatically affect who they are in a number of different ways. And that can be antisocial personality disorder, or it could mean they can grow up to be a mugger. You know?
And it can push in both ways too. You hear the common stories where like grew up with an alcoholic father, one brother becomes an alcoholic, the other one never touches it. Right. So it's like how it's also not just the impetus, but what emotion do you feel when you first notice the impetus in your life, and what does that push you to then do? Does it push you to say, I'm just going to be that because I'm fucked? Or does it push you to be like, no, not me. Never.
Exactly. It definitely depends. So maybe that's something that can tie into what you were talking about earlier. It definitely depends on what kind of person you are, because we all speak a different way and think a different. Like if I see this red cup, you know, and you see the red cup, the first thing you might notice is the rim. The first thing I might notice is the dots on the side. You know, our minds just work in a different way. There's things that we see differently. We're seeing the same thing, but we're looking at it in a different way. And in the same way, people generally, without disorders, they feel the same way about things. Like when I'm happy, I'm happy. When you're happy, you're happy. But your happiness, I'm not in your mind. Your happiness might feel different from my happiness. And me seeing one thing might be different from you seeing one thing. So yeah, two kids in the same household, one might grow up with might develop antisocial personality disorder, and the other one might not. You don't know, you know, because they're different people, and they feel things different way, and they absorb things a different way. And that can make them turn out differently from each other, you know?
If you look at the video you did on Tony, though, one of the things that stood out to me about the narcissistic side to him is the dichotomy you made with humans and animals. So we see throughout the series, I mean, the very first episode starts with the ducks, and he's so excited about them because they fly and land in his pool, and he loves them. And then he later owns a horse, and he'll sleep in the horse's stall when it's sick because there's like a little boy in him, which also has to be said. Jim Gandolfini brought alive so beautifully.
He does have those moments. It's great.
But what makes a guy like that with these disorders? You pick your list. Love something so alive, like an animal, like a horse or ducks, and have complete disregard for the alive things that are most like him.
So for narcissists especially, because there's another great villain, Daniel Plainview, from There Will Be Blood.
Oh yeah, duh. Right. I was like, where did I know that?
He might have, I think I might have said he has narcissistic personality disorder in that video. But even if you want to take away the disorder, he is a narcissist. You know, he loves himself and what he's doing. And one characteristic of narcissists is a lot of them really like little kids. Like they love when they have a little son and they want to play with them all the time. But as soon as they get old enough to have an opinion, that's when things get different, because they can't control them anymore. They're not something innocent and impure anymore, and they're not going to do everything that they say. They're going to be defiant and everything, you know?
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.